Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. I guess at this time we this is the Monday, January 25th, and it is our second meeting regarding the executive order for the New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative.
Jeremy, if we want to just follow protocol and lead us in the Pledge to Allegiance.
Yeah, absolutely. Could everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everybody.
Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes that Awilda had submitted? And if so, they good for approval? Does anyone have any concerns, questions, or items to add?
Make a motion. I'll second that.
Great.
Just I have to have everybody say in favor.
In favor?
Aye.
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 I guess for tonight we will review and have, I guess, a general discussion on a handful of topics listed on the agenda, and I guess we can start with a review of the police department policies that we thought were items that would make sense for us to do a thorough review and make sure that we're meeting the spirit of the New York State request for this process. We have received 2 additional policies for review that were not originally presented at the time the agenda had been created. So there's 3 listed currently, which is the use of force, the bias-based policing, as well as the crisis prevention incidents. However, we also had requested the domestic violence policies and the traffic policies. Chief Farrell was kind enough to get those for us in fairly short order. So has everyone had a chance to review those additional policies? There was those second 2 that were added to the list. So since they were not listed on the agenda, we will be able to have a discussion about them this evening for anyone who has any points to consider, and then maintain a public comment next session for those items as well, since they weren't listed on the agenda for this particular meeting.
In all due fairness, Jeremy, I did not complete both of those, the domestic and the traffic.
No problem. We'll continue discussion on those next week. I think there's more than enough items for us to have a discussion on, and I'd like to thank everyone for their hard work so far. I know that we mentioned in the last meeting that we were sort of short on time, and I appreciate everyone rallying together to help us continue to remain on track for timely satisfaction of the requirement. So I guess we could start with use of force, which is policy 300. Does anyone have any items they would like to talk about in this regard?
Under 3, it's Diane Tangent. Under 303.1, at the bottom, it says force shall not be used by an officer. Executive Law 840. I have no idea what Executive Law 840 is.
I'm sorry. 303.1. I don't see that.
It's on the second page on the bottom.
Got it. 300.3.1. Yes, ma'am. Got it.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'm with you now. Can anyone speak to what Executive Law 840 is? Either Chief or Harvey?
Oh, Jeremy, let me just look it up, but it's just how we can use force and when we're allowed to use force. Let me just.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what 840 is. Just generally, the use of force policy, it's pretty consistent with what I've seen that other police departments have. I think there's kind of a master model, and all of the police departments model their policies after a model policy.
Great. There was nothing that jumped out at me as concerning here, but I'm surely not the king, so to speak. And is there anyone else who had any items they'd like to be able to speak to, or ask the chief to speak that are inside that policy? I mean, this was a fairly robust policy in terms of pages and items to consider, and I felt that it seemed pretty straightforward and standard to me.
Hey, Chief Dwayne here. In your time on the force, have we had an instance where that was used?
Well, force. I mean, force is used to some degree. There's always going to be a force used. Mm-hmm. It's got to be reasonable to what's going on. So when you make an arrest, you're going to be using some type of force. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, for the most part, unless it's totally compliant and totally. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, we definitely.
Well, I'm just saying, can you give an example of something that might stick out that was a little over the top, if you might know, or extenuating circumstances?
Like an incident? Yeah. I mean, for me personally, I had, I had somebody attack me coming off they jump off a deck onto me, attacked me. So, I had to use reasonable force. We get them compliant and handcuffed and move on.
Okay. And
so things like that have happened. I mean, we've had officers attacked several times. Mm-hmm. We've had people fight back. People don't want to get arrested. So it happens.
Yeah. Okay. Not very prevalent, I'm assuming.
No, we're pretty lucky. I mean, we got good officers that can talk and de-escalate situations, and the best part is we know a lot of people here. So when we're dealing with them, it's a different, different relationship.
Great.
We kind of know who's around and who we're communicating with.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Had anyone else come across any items there they'd like to discuss? Harvey, I know you had raised a question that I think we can have some conversations about, and what is and isn't there. Chief, are there any items that are listed in this policy that you're aware of that have been changed at any time recently? Let me rephrase that. Have there been any items in our policy that have recently had a senior governing agency make changes to that would require us to make some sort of a change? Anything,
Well, yes, they added. So they added provisions with chokehold, obstruction of breathing, and blood circulation. So added to our policy was a carotid control hold, which is only allowed to be used during deadly physical force incidents, and the restrictions on windpipe, neck, blocking mouth, nose. Any holds like that are prohibited unless deadly physical force is needed as well. So those were added as per the Municipal Police Training Council's guidance.
Great, thank you. So you've been actively maintaining these records and updating them as the rules and regulations have indicated, such as required?
So like I said, the best thing we have this program, again, it's experts, it's lawyers, this is what they do, and as things get updated legally through laws or trial or court or whatever, they update our policy, I review it, and then make sure everybody gets it out and acknowledges it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Harvey, is there anything in there other than what we've talked about that you think that
as I said in my email, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the carotid hold, which is distinguished. I guess the chief is distinguishing it from a chokehold. I'll go one step back. Chokeholds are effectively illegal in New York State now. For a police officer to intentionally apply one, and if that results in the death or the serious physical injury of a person, that's a C felony now. And that law only applies to police officers. The carotid hold, which I guess is distinguished from a chokehold, I still think that's very dangerous for the person who's being subject to it. And I think it's dangerous for the village of Buchanan in terms of liability.
It's only authorized during deadly physical force. It's saying it's not authorized. It's saying it's only authorized during deadly physical force.
Yeah, I realize
So Shane,
that.
does that mean that you would only use it if you were also in a situation that would call for you to use a gun at the same time, right?
Well, say you're wrestling with somebody, pulls out a knife. I mean, you're not going to get to your gun, so it's there. I mean, this is right from the municipal training council that it's allowed during deadly physical force. It is authorized.
Yeah.
Chokehold, obstruction of breathing, and blood circulation. We take a tool like that out, we jeopardize the public, we jeopardize officers and the safety of that. It states in here that it's only allowed during deadly physical force, just as the same with the chokehold.
Thank you, Chief.
They're two different moves too. They are totally different things.
One's on the. To be clear, the carotid artery is on the side of the neck, right, and it indicates
Correct.
blood flow. Where the chokehold that they would call it indicates the front of the throat, correct, and the airways.
And that's why they have it separated, to clarify, because you don't circumvent the rule, or try to.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for the clarification, sir. Are we safe to move to the next policy to review and to discuss? Bias-based policing, policy number 401.
I do have a question, Jeremy, as far as Harvey's suggestions.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, let's hold off on the bias-based policing, please, and we'll maintain the topic on use of force.
Curious, I know there's suggestions. If there's any of those suggestions that we feel like we want to incorporate, does that have to be voted on by the village board?
No, I'm thinking that it's a state guidelines, and the village is just following whatever those state guidelines would be. Am I correct in assuming that, Marcus?
So,
Okay.
Sorry, yes, Shane can address those.
well, my address would be, if you wanted to remove something that's kind of a law, and
Right.
that would have to go through our legal, and they would have to take full responsibility for removing something, or, so if something were to happen, that would be on them for removing it.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So now my question is, those suggestions that Harvey came up with for us, are they just suggestions, or are they like New York State legal law foundation?
So the law is you cannot apply for a restraint. As a restraint, you cannot apply chokeholds, obstruction of breathing, or blood circulation. Okay, but during deadly physical force, they are authorized.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
So then it would not be prudent to remove them, right? As we don't want to remove tools from a belt of the people that are making every effort to maintain law and order, right? So long as it's got some sort of restriction that exists beyond what we would be listing anyway.
Yeah, I agree. It's coming straight from the council, legal counsel. It's been approved by legal counsel.
Well, it's been approved by the municipal police training.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I wouldn't want to take a tool away from you either, That's life and death.
Harvey, does that C felony also coincide with the carotid hold, or no? Is that solely for the chokehold?
I think it just applies to chokeholds. It has to be an intentional application by a police officer.
Understood.
I would.
Thank you.
I'm going to say it does apply. I mean, It doesn't, that's why it doesn't name all the moves that you can do. You can't do, right? So it just says chokehold and obstruction of breathing or blood circulation, which is carotid artery. So they're just two different moves. So it doesn't, specific, it just says or like holds. So it doesn't, not very clear, I guess, on their laws or whatever that's written, but as mentioned, chokeholds, obstruction of breathing, or blood circulation. And then it just tells you about, the throat, windpipe, neck, blocking the mouth and nose, hinder breathing, or obstruction of blood circulation is prohibited unless deadly physical force is authorized.
Are you reading from the regulation?
This is from the police, the Use of Force Municipal Police Training Council. This was approved in September 2nd, 2020.
Well, I'm actually very happy to see that you've made an effort to keep these policies so current and not something that's still sitting on the books from 6 years ago and hasn't been touched since. So thank you very much for being active in that regard, Chief.
I agree.
Does anyone else have any questions regarding this item on the agenda? No?
No.
Perfect. Next, 401, policy 401, bias-based policing. This is a fairly simple one to get through. Does anyone have comments, questions, concerns?
It was pretty much straightforward.
Yeah, Harvey, anything here that jumped out at you as a cause of concern and something that should be looked at in your professional opinion?
No, just ongoing training regarding that, even though police officers may have been trained initially when they come department or in the academy, that there be ongoing training about that. This is kind of a hot topic, now. So there's a lot of discussion about it.
Is there any sort of best practice as to what type of, I guess, continuing education the officer should receive on this subject?
Well, implicit bias training.
Any sort of frequency that they should have their
I personally
education?
like to see it on a yearly basis. Doesn't have to be extensive, an hour a year or so.
Mhm.
But
So how often are these trainings, Chief?
Oh, well, this is a relatively new one. So I'm going to just guess that they're going to implement this into our in-service training, which is every year.
Okay.
Great.
That's just my guess. But if not, I have no problem looking up a course and go from there. But that's, training is training. So that's good.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Who does it?
Go ahead, Diane.
Who does the in-service training?
Well, it could be depends on, it could be any agency that's holding it, but Westchester County will hold it at their facility, and they might have an instructor from wherever, Greenberg or whoever's trained in it, or maybe they'll bring in a program or somebody else to speak. I don't know how they're going to run it or what they're doing about that, but
typically it's the county chief that
the county
puts these together.
They usually have one of their officers trained in pretty much everything, because it's, they have to teach it at the academy anyway. So it's usually that, but it could be, as long as they're a certified instructor.
Thanks.
Chief, I was curious on page 2, under Supervisor Responsibilities, it speaks to the mobile audio - video. I was just curious, is that used by all officers?
So we only have a mobile data terminal, but we are not linked to anyone. So we have no data capture. It is kind of just it's kind of just a future-proof policy because, we didn't know about body cameras or in our video. We do have MDTs, and hopefully we can get linked on that web-based, system, and then we'll be able to share data through that. But right now, we don't share data we don't have any to communicate.
Okay.
Thank you both for those questions. Anyone else have anything to add or questions to raise? No. And then the third policy for review on the agenda this evening, 409, crisis intervention. Anything here that jumped out at anyone as an area of concern? I can share that I know we have, I've seen in my time in the village and a need on an occasion from time to time. And I actually think that the Buchanan Police Department has done a really great job with crisis intervention and de-escalating some situations that were taking place in the community, including not everything was about negativity and violence, but even just some people that maybe were having a hard time in life at the moment, some maybe elderly people that seemed that they might have been confused and disoriented. And I was always fairly impressed with the de-escalation and the comforting, frankly, that they were able to bring some of these people in a rather hard time. Normally people that you see walking in the neighborhood every day and saying hello, and whatever happens in people's lives that can cause there to be some sort of mental health change or challenge. I was always very impressed with what I saw. And frankly, as I read through the policy here, it sort of coincided with the exact interaction that the officers that I had witnessed it from time to time had followed. So I thought this was great, and I've seen it in practice. Does anyone else have anything here they'd like to sort of talk about or raise questions?
Yeah, Jeremy, that's where our police department kind of stands out among the rest, shall I say, is because it's not cut and dry. It's not, this is the law, this is the crime, this is the punishment. Our officers enforce the law, they keep the peace, they do community interactions, they're therapists, they're jack of all trades in a police officer's uniform. They help the community with more than just law enforcement. They talk people off the ledge when they're having a bad day. They prevent them from maybe crossing that line into a crime just because they know who they are. They interact with them in the community. So I think they do a fantastic job.
Officer Farrell, is there anything that you'd like to add? Anything that you think could be a area of improvement in this regard? It seems to me like, frankly, you guys do a very good job in my experience, and I think that we can couple all of these statements by going back to one of the questions we asked you on the last call, which was, are there any complaints on record about to the contrary of any of our, what you'll call perceptions? And all of these things point to the fact that there hasn't been a problem and you are doing a good job, because there are no complaints against you or anyone on the team. But I'm just curious if there's anything here that you think we should be looking at to better help the residents.
No, again, we will continue training. We learn from every experience, I think, as we learn more and more, we become better at what we're doing. So, I don't really have any recommendations at this time.
Okay.
That's one of the benefits of being such a small community and small force. They know everybody.
I do see there were 14 mental health incidents this past year, and that's more than one a month. So it's probably a great a part of what you do often. Thank you.
The county's probably going to recommend crisis teams that are available 24/7, which will be able to respond if they're called. So that's something that the police department may want to look into if it's available, to have a social worker, a trained social worker respond along with a police officer, if that's possible. I get it that you have a unique situation here where you know most of the residents, and that certainly goes a long way in resolving a problem. But I think there could be situations that where a clinical person, like a social worker, could be helpful. And you might have situations with people that you don't know that you have to respond to.
So Harvey, can I ask you a question about that? And I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm asking you because, frankly, you're much better versed in this than I am, and probably many of us on the committee are. Naturally, not including the chief. But when you indicate a need for maybe having a crisis response team, what does that look like when we have 6 officers and they get a call and they're needed to be at the location in a matter? I mean, look, these guys respond in a minute, right? Like, that's not an unrealistic response time. So are they supposed to wait for a crisis person that's on call from Katona, because that's who's covering it, and they show up in 40 minutes and they let this unfold? Or like, I just don't like, checking the boxes is important, but being realistic in our approach is probably equally important, and making sure that we don't cripple the team, the police department, or more importantly, delay a response to someone who needs help, just to make sure that we check the box from, that would otherwise be applicable for a large, city of some sort.
I'm not suggesting the police delay a response. This has come up in other jurisdictions, and it was pointed out in the other jurisdiction where this was discussed that all of the calls, even for the ambulance corps, go through the police department. The police are going to respond first. If a crisis team, or I think it's really a crisis person, can respond as well, that's great. But if they're going to respond a half hour later, I realize that's not going to help a crisis situation. But to the extent that it's available and they can respond.
Do we have such resources in our village? Are there, professionals that would be available to support the police department?
I think this is something the county's trying to set up countywide.
This is something that Westchester County used to have, running EMS with the fire department. We used to interact a lot of times with the police department and the crisis team. And again, you're not going to get EMS until the scene is safe. So that's the one thing, it was beneficial. I don't know whatever happened with it or what, but it was a good thing. But a lot of these times you're seeing on the news, it's a matter of minutes. And we're very fortunate to have the police officers there within, like Jeremy said, a minute to 2. So,
but if it's going to put in a policy, we would need the resources in order to put that, to say it's part of the policy.
Agreed. I wouldn't put it in policy. I would put the resource available. That may be something we could do.
Yeah, maybe we can explore adding language to the effect that,
It's already in there, Jeremy. It's the request for backup or specialized resources as deemed necessary.
Yeah, it's on the first responders on the second page of the booklet. We have letter B. So that's what I'm saying. If it's there and it says you can call for backup officers and specialized resources, then what are those resources?
Well, if the county provided them at some point, that would only be a wonderful benefit to us. You never know whether there could be a very long standing emotional issue that comes up. Who knows that? So if it were there at our fingertips and the need arose, it would be very good if the county provided it.
Oh, no, I'm in total agreement. I'm just saying if it's part of the policy because it's stated, then I'm just curious as to know what resources the police officers are supposed to use if there aren't any in effect yet.
Got it.
I think right now, the police departments can call the Department of Community Mental Health and get a telephone consultation. I don't think anyone responds given the COVID situation now. But they hope to have something in effect in the future where there can be a response.
Well, again, I'd like to celebrate the department for having language that indicates the interest of making those calls to request that support when the need arises to begin with. It sounds like, Harvey, the language is there. Is there a reason why that you feel that needs to be something more robust?
No, I'm just saying if the need arises, get or call a mental health professional.
Awesome. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And Harvey, no one's picking you apart, right? Again,
I'm not worried about it.
Okay, thank you. We're respectful inquisition, not you know. So that's the three policies that we had covered on the agenda. The two that were added after the fact, which will remain, I guess, open for public discussion next week for the people in the audience and anyone on the committee who hasn't had the opportunity to review them as detailed as they would have liked, would have been the policy 311, domestic violence, and policy 500, traffic. While we can, I guess, decide as a group now, do we want to sort of discuss these now and then complete them next meeting, or do you want to table them for the next meeting? I can share that I didn't see anything in either of these that were problematic, but I did have a question that I'd like to open the floor to that person. They would like to mention it now regarding counting those situations in terms of what we're categorizing as domestic and not. Is there anyone who would like to sort of speak to that portion now?
Well, under the Village of Buchanan Police Call statistics, there is disputes, family and neighbor, but there is nothing that is domestic violence, and it specifically states in the definition under domestic violence, neighbors are not part of the domestic violence definitions. Persons related by blood. If you read it, there's it's not just disputes between neighbors. It's disputes between families or domestic violence. So we don't have a line that states calls for domestic violence.
So I'd like to add one portion to your statement, Ms. Tangent, that I think is really important, and I agree with you. And there's an item that I failed to recognize that I did not add on to the agenda, so we can continue that conversation now as a group, and then of course keep it open for the next meeting as well. But to exactly your point about the lack of separation between the items, I think it goes back to the information technology that is lacking in the department. And one of the items that we have sort of all touched on in one capacity or another has been the need for a robust database, and one that will allow much better reporting to be disseminated to the village and to the residents, and more importantly by the chief. Apparently the way that it works now, it spits out on paper, and someone has to literally review every individual incident and sort of use a pen and paper to tick mark which categories each particular call would fall into, which is an incredibly ridiculous use of any person's time. And the chief looking into a better sort of database and reporting technology, something with like some sort of a BI component, a business intelligence component, where you could sort of, you put a whole bunch of stuff in and it'll spit it out and allow you to slice and dice the data in different fashion. So I apologize for having failed to have list that on the agenda. We can, of course, talk about it now if anyone would like, or we can discuss it further at another meeting, or both. But I think that tool alone would be able to address your concern, Ms. Tangent, and that we have to sort of group those together now. Chief Farrell, would you like to share anything about either Ms. Tangent's point directly, or the overall need for a better database system, or is what we have you think sufficient?
I mean, I could address definitely Mrs. Tangent. I just think we need to, well, I
It'll
can,
have to be Diane.
we can modify, we can modify the call. I mean, this is just what's been passed down to me. So there's no problems in modifying things and changing things. I mean, that's not a problem at all. So we can always make that part of our plan and to revamp this and, and make it work more towards the village of Buchanan.
Do you think that there'd be benefit to the village and to the police department and to the residents if there was a more robust data management platform available?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean,
Okay.
anything that makes, our now that data is so important and, anything that we can do to make it streamlined and be able to put it out, that'd be great.
Are you now using a software
Fantastic.
program are you now using
No, this is just an Excel spreadsheet. So I just download the calls, I go through them, and then I put them on an Excel spreadsheet.
there must be software programs that
there-
would be
Here's
very available, that would very easily print out reports with all the information. I know I happen to have been a school secretary in special ed, and we had IEPs, and I tell you, we could print out almost from everything we wanted, from by sex, by racial, by learning disability, whatever it was. So they must have some software programs out there that
and
would
like
enhance
I
your.
mentioned before that we're looking, I'm looking into other options. The county was doing one that's going to be a, countywide database, and it will be able to be programmed to our needs and for me to be able to get the information that I need. Again, I'm just looking into it. It's, it's in the works for that. So there are different programs out there. I mean, it's just, a matter of finding the right one for us.
Would that be a platform that would be linked to Westchester?
Yeah, so it would be a web-based program. And yeah, it would be, so all the data would be shared with the county. And then obviously we would have our own program for our own information.
Good.
Any other items that anyone would like to discuss on either the domestic violence or the traffic topic, or the third item that I had not included on the agenda? Again, I apologize, which was regarding database technology. Anything else anyone would like to speak to on those points before we go to the next item? No? Okay, great. So body and dash cams. Chief had put together some preliminary pricing in terms of the cost to obtain equipment so that we could have body cams for each of our officers. However, Harvey sort of shared some, what I frankly was surprised to hear, that the cost of dash cams and body cams is not the physical equipment. It's actually the need to review, scrub, and disseminate the information on a timely basis, and how much time, effort, and challenge is associated, particularly in a smaller department, in turning that information around so that you could scrub and redact what is not supposed to be released. For example, maybe a minor was filmed in the middle of an interaction and you needed to go through that to maintain privacy of an underage person who's unaffiliated with the incident but happened to be captured. But I was very surprised to hear of that challenge. It's just something that I hadn't considered or thought of. And did we learn, are there any items yet or any programs yet, Chief, that coincide with Westchester County offering maybe some support to smaller departments to be able to implement such hardware for their officers?
I haven't heard of any.
Okay.
What about grants? Any possibility of grants on those items?
I'm sure there could be something out there. I mean, there'd be state funded, so that's why we got to make sure we get this in. But we definitely look into it, you know.
Great. Thank you so much.
Do you think there's a need for body cams?
Is he calling you back because he's in a meeting on the phone? All right, I'll tell him. Sure. I know.
Who was that question directed at, Diane?
The chief.
Oh, sorry, what was the question?
Diane asked if you think there's a need for body cams.
I think any tool is great. I mean, body cams help the officers, they protect the people. I mean, I'm not against them. I mean, every tool that we can get is great. So, I mean, I think they're great. So if we could manage it, it would be fine. It's just, it's a very big expense, straight from the beginning, and then every year, and then all the data saving, stuff like that. So it's something we could always look into. I mean, I've already
The structure seems to be more a software as a service platform. It's not an expense that, you don't acquire equipment and it's done. It seems there's going to be a fairly substantial ongoing cost to even accessing and managing the data once it's captured by the upfront cost of the equipment that you bought. Seems like it's a sort of a double-edged expense item.
Yep, there's definitely, there's going to be always costs associated with any tool you put into place. So a back-end tool, cost. So
yeah.
Would it be a really exorbitant cost?
You know what? I've never dealt with it. I just know other departments have whole units that just do this. Even the small ones have one or two officers just dedicated just to dealing with the body cameras and stuff. So it is consuming.
Any other items to mention or to discuss in this regard? Anyone? I'm going to move on if there's other items anyone would like to talk about.
So we said that body cams cost a lot of money. It's time consuming. Although a great tool for police officers, is that the same thing for dash cams?
Yeah, so I quickly looked into dash cams right after that meeting the other day, and they're about the same price, and the footage is actually usually longer. So yeah, there's a lot more data usage on that. So be the same thing with downloading and all of that and redacting, but the data is going to be a lot more.
Okay.
You also pay for it.
I spoke with a friend of mine who's also in law enforcement, and he said that one of the big challenges is not the equipment cost, it's the data storage, right? There's the company that you buy the cameras from gets to control your data, and as a result, the more data you compile, the more the size of your files are that are being housed, and therefore it becomes an ever-growing expense, of that you have to hold this for X period of time, and it's going to continue to accumulate as every day goes on. And it seems like it may be one of those insurmountable expenses, but it's definitely worth exploring and finding out if there's opportunity to incorporate it in some capacity.
This is another area where the county talked about a regional approach for storage and perhaps, for buying the initial equipment. I just don't see how it's practical for Buchanan to do it on your own. It's just prohibitive in terms of cost. I'd love to see it, but it's just impractical.
Thank you, Harvey. I appreciate the added color. Item C on the agenda, web page for the Buchanan Police Department. This seems like it's a fairly straightforward item and something that has really, there's no negative for anybody for it. It seems like it'd be a really great way to have another landing page for people to interact with the police, including their phone number, maybe some items, some of the public service work you're doing, coffee with a cop or one of those things, or coffee with the chief could be something posted there. Anyone have anything they'd like to discuss in regard to making sure that, and even if it's not a separate web page, but a link on the Buchanan homepage, whatever ends up being decided as the most appropriate approach, something that's going to give them a web presence and allow two-way interaction with the police department and the community.
Don't forget, I'm sorry, Diane, go ahead.
No, that's okay. You can be first.
No, after you.
I looked up other police departments, but I also looked at Buchanan's, and it's really pretty dismal. You have to go all the way down in the directory of the homepage, and under what was it, community links or something? It wasn't community links. It was another one. There was the police phone, the fire phone, and to say 911. On the homepage, there is a police shield. If you hit the police shield, it's a police tips hotline. It tells you how you can talk directly to a policeman. And it still had Brian Tubbs, chief, on the page. So I looked at others, and most of them did have a link from the homepage of their community or village or town. And some were much greater than others, but most of them had at least a picture of the chief and the phone numbers right there. One had a mission statement, which was very good. Croton has a really comprehensive one. You can actually look at, not all their police court calls, but they do pick out all week, every day of the week, you can see some of their calls. They pick out some that you can look at, either up from 5 one days up to 10. It's not all of them, but they select a few to put on there so that the people see. But I do think that was, very unique. But I do think we really should be able to go on the homepage and immediately see where the police department is, not have to go all the way down and look to see if there's anything for the police department. Should at least say police department, and only have to hit on that, not something, and then get to the police department.
Chairman, if I can speak on the website for a minute?
Please.
Yes, we're actually redesigning the website as we speak. Our website design is actually working on improving the website. We actually realized that the police presence is not there, but also we want to upgrade the building department. There's no building department page, so people know how to file for building permits. There's a number of items we're trying to make it easier for our residents to be able to contact with multiple departments. And what we're going to do is, if you look at any of the website, there'll be a line that says departments. On the departments, all the departments will be listed. You can pick on the one you want, and then the police department will be able to put the information in there. So we'll be working with all the departments to put information out there. And even though I know we're talking about the police department, I just want to say that most of our phone calls have to do with garbage collection. So, which is an interesting aspect of how the needs of our community are. But the police department be one of the departments as all the other departments, and we'll put as much information there as possible, and Shane can be more interactive. If Shane would like to have his picture up there, I'll be more than happy to put it up there as well. So most of the departments did not want their pictures, so we'll see if Shane wants to have his picture up there. So just want to let everybody know we're working on it, and we should have something in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
Thank you.
Plus, Harvey suggested having an anonymous tip line.
We could put a link to an email address that people can do that, or we can put a phone number that we could do. I'll work with Shane on putting that information out there as well. That's not a problem.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus.
Actually,
Thank you for adding that.
The police shield that's on the site right now, that's exactly what it is, a police tips hotline that you could go on the email and give an anonymous tip if you want. It just needs to be updated, a person wouldn't know that if you hit on that shield that you're going to get the police hotline tip hotline.
Kind of found it by accident.
Yeah. Yes, because I wanted to look at the site to see exactly what it was like, and because of this discussion tonight.
Good job.
All great points, and we'll be working on updating all that information.
Great. Thank you, Marcus.
Yeah.
The letter D under the general discussions by panelists was regarding translation services. One of the items that we're gonna look to research here is the opportunity to see if there's a service available, whether it's an app for the officers' phones or preferably maybe even a number you can dial that would allow them some sort of access to maybe a multitude of different different translators to cover a multitude of different languages. If we have an officer who speaks a particular language, whether 6 officers on our force, comes out to around 23 and change % of shifts would be covered in a given week by that particular officer.
Hey, one of them comes Phil.
So I'm not sure that hiring officers to cover every language makes the most sense, but finding a tool that would maybe allow them to dive in so that if they were interacting with someone who speaks Spanish or Portuguese or Italian or Mandarin or Russian or anything of the sort, they're not limited by the experience of a particular officer who has foreign language capabilities, but rather a service that would be able to offer them the support for any of the different languages that they may encounter. Does anyone have anything they would like to talk about in this regard? Any thoughts or concerns?
I just want to pass that idea over to the committee. I don't know if you guys tried, but I tried over the weekend. My background is Spanish, but my Spanish is terrible. But my mother-in-law speaks perfect Spanish, so I actually use Google Translator between me and her, and he seemed to work 99% perfectly. So that's unless Harvey, who works in legal side, if he thinks we need something more sophisticated, that's something that's really good.
Well,
to do
first of all, Spanish is the biggie here.
Yes,
your population is about 12 or 13% Spanish, and I know Peekskill has a huge Spanish population, and I imagine people are driving through Buchanan,
correct,
all the time. It may a translation app is better than nothing, but I'm thinking about the situation. Let's say the police make an arrest, they have to give Miranda rights. An app isn't going to cut it. You need someone speaking to the person arrested in Spanish. Now, if you can get someone from a neighboring department like Peekskill, that's fine. Chief, if I recall, you said you don't have any Spanish-speaking officers right now on the force. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I think in the future, when you have an opening, when you're looking to hire a police officer, it'd be great if you had someone who was fluent in Spanish. And until then, you have to use other methods. But when you can have certain situations where an app's not going to work. Maybe a translation line where you have a fluent Spanish speaker you can use, but it's not like having someone there talking to a person in Spanish.
Shane, does the county have any kind of services like that, Shane? That's somebody available, or do you have access to call somebody if something like that happens?
No, we don't. I mean, we don't have a language line here, so we can go to Peekskill and hope their officer, state police. Peekskill has the translate 911 translator if we can use that. But we don't.
The question: have you arrested somebody that doesn't speak any Spanish, or what the process of that would be if you had that occasion?
Yeah, we usually can get an officer from another department.
So Harvey was explaining Miranda rights, and you arrest somebody. What the process would be to hold somebody and just pull in somebody from Peekskill or neighboring community?
Yeah, we would contact anybody. Usually Peekskill and state police are our easiest to get in touch with. And they come by and they'll take a statement for us. They'll do all of that stuff. So that's what we usually do.
So Harvey, to address that question, I don't know, is that a written policy, Shane, or address Harvey's concern, should we put that into some kind of policy?
I think Harvey's correct. I think we should look into having something that's at our fingertips. So, in case of an incident where you can't find an officer, we're not delaying the process. So yeah, I think it's something that we should definitely look into.
So maybe a suggestion would be the court brings a Spanish translator in, maybe to have I'm just throwing it out there, maybe to have a person that could provide a stipend for that person to be available, 24/7 to respond to any Spanish speaking, and and put them on speakerphone and have them translate. Harvey, I'm just trying to get an idea because one Spanish speaking officer is not going to be available 24/7.
Yeah.
But if we can get
A Spanish-speaking officer is probably the least of the concerns, right? Because there's so much access to people that are bilingual and speak English and Spanish on almost probably every neighboring police department. I think we just should make sense to have a policy that outlines like the protocol so that no one can question what these steps are. And then maybe when you can't find an officer, there should be a tool available that they could dial into. I understand there is like an 800 number that's out there that's X dollars a minute or something. Who one of my friends in law enforcement just texted me and who was listening to the call and shared the same language line or something. I'll share that with you after the call, Shane.
Oh, guys,
Is there a fee for that?
hey guys, is there a fee? Is there a fee for that?
Do they charge you for translation?
I just found some of this. There is a language line that other courts have used that are available 24/7. So let me see if there's any cost for that, and I can report back to the committee at the next meeting.
I'm hearing it's $5 a minute, but that doesn't mean they're talking about the same one either. So
Okay.
someone just shared that.
That's good. Somebody shared the information with me as well. Another court is using that in case you have to arraign somebody in the middle of the night or something like that. So maybe we could use that for the police officers as well. Somebody get some details on. I'll share with Shane and the whole committee as well.
My only question on that, Marcus, and this might be for Harvey, is if you use an interpreter that is not a physical police officer within the area of Buchanan, and they're read their rights, and that individual acknowledges that he understands his rights, but then fights that in court, how do you get that interpreter to get them in court to acknowledge that, yes, they understood their rights?
Yeah, James. That's a good point. The safest thing from the police point of view is to have a police officer, a fluent Spanish-speaking police officer, give that person his rights. So then that officer could testify, I gave him his rights, he's in Spanish. I could tell he understood, go through the litany of what happened. So from the police point of view, that's certainly the safest thing.
Thank you.
Could that be a police officer from Peekskill? It doesn't make any difference as long as it's a police officer. I could see with the state police who has jurisdiction in Buchanan. Do they need to have jurisdiction in Buchanan?
I don't believe so, but that would be a question for Steve, who's not on the line, I don't think. The ADA. But now we've worked hand in hand with Peekskill before plenty of times, and I've never had an issue.
A police officer has arrest powers anywhere in New York State, so they have jurisdiction really anywhere in New York State. It's just a matter of administrative rulings and convenience. They only work in their own jurisdiction.
That answers my question.
It really doesn't seem to me like it makes the most sense to spend money on hiring a Spanish-speaking interpreter when we have access to plenty of surrounding officers who are happy to work with the Buchanan Police Department. It just seems to me like a service would be a great backup for those sort of one-off situations that maybe never have even happened to date, where there's someone who doesn't speak English or Spanish. I mean, Spanish is probably the easiest language for us to cover in that's, aside from English.
So maybe, like I said, maybe there should be a little policy in regards to what the chain of the process would be, that you reach out to Peekskill State Police. Shane, I know you do it as automatic, but maybe there should be some kind of policy. Everybody understand what the policy would be in case you hit somebody who's just Spanish speaking. I was throwing it out there if that's something the committee should address.
I agree, Marcus.
Let's see.
And then as a final point, we were going to sort of plan for a March 12th deadline for all of these policies and procedures, so that the village has time to take them and do the appropriate steps to finalize this process and submit it in time for New York State. Does anyone have any questions about that March 12th deadline, or any concerns or reservations?
I feel we can meet the deadline if we also have meetings offline.
I thank everybody.
This way we can report back some of the findings and our work to our every other week meetings, and we should be able to have this wrapped up. I mean, I think that the review of these policies tonight and the work that's been done offline sort of indicates the same. And frankly, it's nice to know that we have a police department that has made a lot of these recent changes to the policies, so we're not really breaking this thing down and trying to make sure that I is dotted and T is crossed. A lot of the rules seem like they've been added in as they've become sort of public discourse here, similar to this use of force adjustment that was made as September.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Chief, anything that you would like to add or talk about here? You've been a pretty active participant tonight. Thank you. I appreciate your time, effort, and candor. But is there anything else here that you'd like to go over or have us look into with you or for you?
No, not at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Chief, I have a question, if you don't mind. What are some of the pros or cons of us being dispatched from Peekskill Police Department compared to being directly dialed into the Buchanan Police? I know I'm going off script here.
Well, I mean, they would have a dispatcher. So the pros is they're going to be able. We could be driving and then we'll have to pull over to answer a phone call and grab a notepad, try to write things down, where they already have that going on. So I think it's a good process for them to have a dispatcher, record everything, put everything in the computer, know where they're sending us, things like that. So I think it's all around a good thing.
Okay.
But we do get many calls just to our cell phone too. So, but that's the cons are, like I said, the officer's on the road, or he could be on another call, or involved in something else. So, they have to stop, get a pad, take the notes, try to, have good service, all of those things. So those are the cons with it.
Okay. Thank you.
And does anyone else have anything they would like to discuss? And if not, then we can open it up for comments from the floor.
So we got a couple people who are attendees. If anybody wants to ask a question, please raise your hand. That's normally either at the bottom of your screen, or if you have an iPad, there'll be a little thing on the right-hand side. You click on more, and then you can raise your hand there. So, Jeremy, I don't see anybody raise their hand yet. I want to give them a minute. And as we're waiting, do you guys are planning to have when you want to have another meeting next week or 2 weeks from now? I just want to see what you guys want to do next.
The standing meeting is every other week. Is that correct, Marcus? So the public meeting would be 2 weeks from today?
That's correct. So that would be February 8th.
Correct. I think at 7 o'clock. Yeah.
Correct. And like as I was mentioned before, if the committee wanted to have a meeting to discuss anything, of course you could, and you can do that anytime you wish.
Yeah, I think we should do. I think the committee should hold another meeting prior to that one to make sure that we can maintain this timeline and get this thing all to the finish line. If you'd like, we can go to executive session at the conclusion here, so we can work out our personal calendars, and in the meantime not hold up anyone who wants to speak publicly from the floor. Or do you have no hands raised at this time?
It doesn't look like there's any questions out there at all.
Fantastic. So
and I just Jeremy, just one thing. So some of the items we've talked about tonight, these are going to be put into our plan, right? Because we need to start developing this plan. So I'm just wondering, the policy for translations, looking into body cameras. Are these all things that we are going to be putting into our plan? Or is this what we're voting on or anything like that? Or you guys, we're not there yet? We just need to start developing some areas of the plan, I would imagine. You know, at least a couple items.
So I think we can, I don't know that are we prepared to do that this moment as a team? I'm not certain that we are, but would that be something how long is it going to take to do, Shane?
Oh, no, I don't know. I mean, what to do like a policy? I mean, we wouldn't, I mean, it's part of the plan. So it would take me some time, you know, to develop one, figure one out and everything. So, but we only have to submit a plan by April. And I got time to do everything, to look into all this stuff.
And we want March 12th to be our deadline here.
Right.
So
I just want to make sure we're writing down our plan. That's all.
So Shane, I think what the committee and going back and forth is maybe the possibility of looking into, like you said, body cameras and just to have in the plan is that we'll be reviewing it and see what the cost benefit of that would be, and then that can be determined at a future date by the village board.
And these are just areas that, again, this is a plan. It's a plan for us to make sure we look into all of this stuff and develop it as we can go and make the changes we need, and really drive it home, you know. So that's why I just want to make sure we're putting these things into a plan, or, you know, at least at some point.
It's my understanding that we are developing this plan. That's part of it. We're reviewing the policies, and as a result of that, we're making a plan. Part of it is to upgrade our website. All these things we spoke about will be part of the plan.
Correct. We need to know that is my impression.
Yeah, we're identifying what's applicable to us, to Buchanan, and how it relates to what the state is seeking. Not everything is going to be applicable to your policing or our policing here in the village. So the idea is to go through the checkoff list, make sure that the things that apply to us, we can speak to, like body cams. I mean, the simple point on that would be, even at this point, and I think it's anecdotally speaking, is that body cams really wouldn't be necessary to our department. And, you know, there was something that was examined, and unless the county comes in with some other type of system that we can also utilize in conjunction with them, you know, that's kind of a moot point. Certainly the other things to go along with the website, the mission statement, the Spanish-speaking app or whatever, we can talk about how that was discussed and what some recommendations were. And, you know, Shane, I said all along, we want to keep this simple and direct to the point.
That's all. I just want to make sure we don't have to vote. I just want to miss a step and then our plan gets sent back or something. That's all.
No, I think Shane, I think you got the gist of everything, including the records management system. Again, it's something that may be offered by the county. I think the idea is maybe, Shane, is maybe to draft up what are the points that we've been discussing, and that way the committee can just vote on this, and also include that the policies and procedure also reviewed, and there were no comments from either the committee or the public, and that could be all tied into one report back to the state. That's what I'm thinking. And then there's a lot of things that came out of the committee that we want to study and discuss that with the village board in the future.
I mean, the good news is the committee doesn't have to have every one of these ideas implemented and functioning by the submittal date. It just simply means that the outline has to be created, right? And there has to be a plan to have a path forward, if you will, which I don't think we're going to have any problem meeting the appropriate deadlines in that regard. And it'll also leave you time to do your job that you do every day, and also make sure that we bring forth the appropriate the measures here to satisfy the state requirements, and make sure that we have a great police department that's working for the community, and that it's continuing to evolve as the world that we live in evolves. I mean, I think that's also an important part here, right? The ability to be forward thinking and adaptable. Dynamic is important.
All right, Jeremy, no questions from the public at all, so you can move forward.
Great. So I guess we will move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Great.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Anybody want to second it?
I second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody. Thanks for
Night.
your time tonight. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.